Good evening. I'd like to open the East Lyme Board of Finance regular meeting. Today is Wednesday, August 9th. The time is 7 p.m. So I'd like to call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda is delegations, where anyone can speak to an item on our agenda today. Is there anyone here who wants to speak to items? Not seeing any. Move on to approval of the minutes, the regular meeting of June 14, 2023. Did anyone have any issues, corrections, comments? If not, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of June 14th, 2023?
Approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of the Board of Finance on June 14th, 2023.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Nope. Motion carries 6-0-0. Next on the agenda is reports. We have our first selectman, Mr. Kevin Suri.
Thank you very much, Denise. First of all, the most exciting news in a long time is our U12 Little League team won the state championship this year. First time ever a U12 team has done that for the boys in town. And the games were really exciting. I got to watch them. I went down to Trumbull to watch them win the championship down there. And then sadly they went into the Metro, which is it's a four-state metro, which was New York, New Jersey, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. And sadly, we lost both games. The second game against Rhode Island is extremely close. And very, very proud of them, and looking forward to bringing them to a selectmen's meeting to recognize them for their accomplishments. Other things, we also, back on the 1st, a week ago, on the 1st of August, we had the National Night Out for first responders. The police department and the firefighters were there, as well as some EMTs. Also, Waterford came over as well up at Flanders School. It was a really nice night. You got to see one of the dogs in action, lots of other activities going on. So a very fun night. This follow-up from last year's, it was really well attended and enjoyable. Moving on to other things, we've appointed a ad hoc committee on short-term rentals. It's gotten a lot of press not only in town here but elsewhere. And this looks way at addressing the problem. There's 8 members of it, 1 member of the Board of Selectmen, 1 member of the one member of the Zoning Commission, and then 6 members of the community at large. Some are representing the beach communities and so forth like that, and there are some just at large that aren't from the beach community. And people on both sides. There's some people on there that really don't like these. They want to see them heavily regulated, and others who have them and look at, yes, they need to be regulated, but we need to have a common sense approach. So we've given them a charge to examine it. They have at their for research or for some as a resource, they'll have the zoning official, the building official, and the fire marshal, as well as we also have appointed a recording secretary for them as well. They'll be having their first meeting Monday night, which they'll elect a chair, and then the town attorney will read the charge. And one of the things is they have to have, very much like the Charter Revision Commission, they'll have to have 2 public hearings, one at the onset and then one prior to making a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. And they have to report back to the Board of Selectmen the recommendation within 90 days or longer if they feel that's necessary. So if you do the math, it will not be the sitting board. It'll be the the next board that'll technically get the recommendations, but we don't want to rush this. We want it done to look at what's being done elsewhere, and that's why we have the ad hoc committee, to let them have the research to do that. Charter revision was published in the paper last week. It's been all set. Everything's been adopted. The questions have been approved by the Secretary of the State, and then probably in early October we'll be sending out a notification to everybody in town so they can see what the questions are. And we cannot in any way in that mailing indicate what we think is a good idea. That's strictly, this is what the questions will be, and that if they want to review the charter revision and so forth like that, they can do it online. But, you know, if somebody calls me in the office here, I can't say, yeah, vote yes or no, vote no to that. That's something, you know, you can't do either in town or use any town funds to advocate either way for that. So, and that will have to be approved by the town attorney and that before it goes out. You may have seen an article in the paper yesterday, or maybe, I think it was yesterday, about the Niantic tribe wanting to have that area up behind the bathhouse at McCook's, where it even says Niantic tribe burial grounds. Yale has identified some remains, and now the tribe archaeologists approached, actually Jerry Lock and I met with them last Thursday, and it was a really interesting meeting. We have to move one statue down there that's there that, you know, shows two kids playing. We already have a location for that, and there's a couple other things that the public trust has done that we can move. But it's interesting how they're going to approach this too. They're even going to bring in, once this is done, if they want to reinter people here, they'll even have a device to look into the ground to make sure that you're not trespassing on some other hallowed ground at that point in time. So I think everyone is extremely supportive of this, and I've invited John Pfeiffer, who's their archaeologist, to come to the Board of Selectmen next month to make his presentation. Moving on, I finally met the people I've been dealing with at Amtrak. They did a visit. Now that COVID's over, they do a couple of visits a year. They agreed immensely that no, that fence would not have been a good idea here, now that they actually got to see it. The thing is, fences, like budget cuts, one of the first things to go are new fences. So that's where we stand right now. Once they have a fence for us to look at, they're going to let us know. But they're very cooperative, and they said they want the town to be a part of the solution to that. That's pretty much it right now. And any questions? Richard?
Yes, for the charter revision, each of the proposals for the revision to the charter will be voted on separately.
The substantive, just the substantive changes. For instance, there's one right now where we're eliminating constables and so forth like that from that. They don't even exist anymore.
Right.
So we're not going to ask people should they be eliminated. Also, there's several provisions in that just aren't applicable anymore. So those don't really need to be voted on. But everything else, 4 or 2 year term for the first selectman, and charter revision had that as basically the board and first selectman as 4 year terms, 4 or 2. We decided to separate those out as 2 separate questions. So those are 2. Town clerk and tax collector, appointed or elected, that'll be a question. There's about, I think, 9 or 10 questions that people say yes or no to on election day.
Oh, okay, so it's individual yes or no's.
For those substantive ones, yeah.
Yeah. And then for the Niantic tribe burial grounds, currently where that statue is, it needs to get moved. There's fencing there.
The fencing is fine.
Well, I'm thinking to make it more accessible, you have to go down to the entrance to McCook's Beach and then wind your way all the way up there. Could it be possible that it would
Why don't
be
we
more
ask that would be a question for the Niantic tribe, because they're the ones, it's going to be their burial grounds. I think that should be left to them to decide, not us.
Okay.
I'm sure whatever they would like, we would try to accommodate.
Oh, okay.
Did you want to mention yesterday's grand opening?
Noble Gas, yes. Oh, yes, Noble Gas, yes. It was really good. Noble Gas up at exit 75. It was really packed yesterday when they were in there, but it was a really nice opening. It's a great resource. They're going to try and keep their prices as low as possible to match other areas in town. And they have a Nardelli's in there. They have coffee. They have pretty much everything. It'd be a great resource for the town, especially for those of us at the north end that sometimes get, especially now too. What I didn't mention is things we're talking about exit 75. Let's come down to exit 74. I have that right here and went right past it. They're doing the blasting now. We've only gotten one complaint, and that's because someone said they said a 15-minute warning. We got a 12-minute warning, so that was okay. But outside of that, we are not taking many complaints. We're only blasting once a day right now, so that's been a little easier. The biggest problem is you've seen we had to enter into a contract with Montville for private duty, so their officers come down here. State police have had trouble filling their overtime spots, so when 95 gets closed, it's usually the state troopers that go up there and do it. Because of their shortage, our officers have had to go up there to shut it down, which means we have to have more officers out there in the course of the day, and they get tired. There's other road jobs in town as well, so this will let the Montville officers come down. They're totally responsible for all their expenses and that. We don't pay them. The contractor does. They're responsible for all their workers' comp, everything else. It's just that we have an extra resource. So, but that's it. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. We don't have anyone here from the superintendent's office or the Board of Ed, so we'll move on to Mr. Gervais, Director of Finance.
All right. Can everyone hear me okay? All right. So we have a fun-filled agenda today. We're going to start out talking about some of the finance projects. We're going to blast through them, so you've been hearing those for the last year or so. We're going to give you an audit update on 2022, where we stand on 2023, and then some ongoing projects amongst a list of other things. So starting out, Munis, we're still going live. We want to go live July 1, 2024, which will be next fiscal year. That seems far out, but I mean, I think there's 77 or 67 implementation days, 8-hour implementation days that the Deputy Finance Director and myself have been doing. So we're rolling right along there. Banking, we are trying to establish zero balance accounts and investment accounts or money market kind of accounts that are interest bearing. Is there a cricket over there? Okay, I heard a cricket. Sorry. Okay, so yep, we're implementing a zero balance account, so we will have all of our cash, or the majority of our cash, in interest-bearing accounts. In a little bit, we'll go over our interest income projection. Exploring new software. Besides Munis, which I inherited, there's some other software out there in the municipal finance realm. DebtBook, LeaseCrunch, ClearGov, OpenGov are some of the bigger softwares in the finance municipal realm. The one I've been exploring a lot of is ClearGov. Old Saybrook uses ClearGov right now, and there's some other towns around us that are implementing that. DebtBook and LeaseCrunch, both, there's new GASB standards for leases. So those kind of help that, and also with the debt and debt service. And then updating policies and procedures just within the finance office. We have retirement in the finance office, and we're also looking to revamp a lot of the procedures that each of the 3 clerks in the office do in a given day, and make sure it's the most efficient use of our time. So getting into the bond rating that Kevin, Scott, Frazier, the treasurer, and myself conducted, I guess you would say. So there's 2 types of, we have general obligation bonds, and then we have notes. The notes are due next year, and you can see August 8th they're due, and then our notes are for a 15-year duration. And so those are due 2043. You can see our ratings. We stayed the same last year, AA stable, and then we have SP 1+, which is a short-term. I believe it's the highest short-term rating they can give. And you have handouts that S&P provided us to pass out, which explains all the rankings and how they came to these ratings. And in there you'll see some things we're going to talk about in the next couple, in the coming months. The environmental, social governance spot there. There's a little section that they wanted us to work on in the future regarding our coastal exposure, being on the coast. They referred us to Branford to look at the Coastal Resiliency Fund that they established, and that's been working down the coast. I believe it's Branford, Guilford, and some other coastal towns are starting to create these funds, and so we're going to have to start looking at that as well. So Coastal Resiliency Fund. And the other one they were, I think it's been the last couple of years they discussed, was an OPEB trust. Looking to establish that at some point as well. The bond sales. So that was the rating of our bonds in the town. How did we do when we sold them? So as you can see, I'm an accountant, not really a finance guy. There's 5 different interest rates there, but I'm thinking it's the all-in TIC one that I like, the 3.52. You can see the left side is the bonds, the 15-year bonds, and the right side is the anticipation notes that will roll over into bonds, presumably next year. So the notes have a higher rate because they're short term, so that's a 4.6%, and the bonds are at 3.5. So, finance calendar. Let's talk about that for a second. I'd like to establish a calendar, and this is just a draft. I can't find my copy. Okay, I don't need one. I can talk about. So, what I would like to do is establish a calendar, so everyone has a clear expectation of what we're going to, the regular items, right? So, if we have any suggestions, I think you can email me. It's kind of, I think we could talk about this every month and just work through it. Do you have any? I handed this out today.
No,
so I was working on this last night.
I just thought it was a good idea because
Yeah.
this way we have, things don't slip through the cracks.
Yep. So just looking at that and thinking about it through the course of today, I noticed I didn't put quarterly balance sheets on there. So maybe a quarterly, draft financials every quarter would be good. And also maybe on an off month, we discuss CNRE and bonded projects.
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe at the quarter end we'll do the draft balance sheet, and then the following month we'll do CNRE and bonding. And then maybe we do the same thing with ARPA. We just wrap that in with wrap that in there. So, if anyone has any questions or things you'd like to see added to that, we can discuss that. So
Good.
And I know the bottom part there, the past 6 months, it looks like it's discolored. It says bonding timing. I just put that there because I'd like to try to move our bonding maybe to a couple later months, so all of our debt service payments aren't in the 15 days of each other. Spread that out maybe a month or two, but we'll work towards that. Financial statement update. Fiscal year 2022. We are in the midst of that. Auditors are coming in. They were supposed to come in last week. We are delaying them until next Thursday, Friday. They'll be in here doing some field work. So we're just wrapping up our balancing and reconciliations, and as we complete it, we're sending them off funds at a time. So fiscal year 23, we are still working through that close. We have until, I've done a hard deadline of August 15th to get your invoices in, and accounts receivable and everything, so we can close that fund, or close that year, the 15th of August, next week. In 2024, yes, we are 5-6 weeks into 2024 already, and so we're monitoring. A big emphasis is on lines that were over budget in 2023. So, police overtime I'm watching, the part-time versus full-time firemen in Flanders, things like that, just to see where they're shaping up early in the year, and so maybe we can project out and see where we're gonna stand at the end of the year, with everything the same. Ongoing discussions, we've talked about the grant fund, establishing harbor management fund, we talked about that. Operating transfers, that will be at the next meeting. I had it for the last Board of Selectmen meeting, and then that day a few transfers came. We had to do a few more transfers, and so the whole sheet had to be redone, and I didn't have that time. So we'll push that off to the next meeting. Fund balance policy. In your handouts, there's a 5-page document for a draft fund balance policy. I believe I emailed you all copies of that as well. So if you want to make changes on that copy, you can. I'll take handwritten changes. Also, that has tracked changes on it. So if you just want to make changes in that document and then send it back, that works as well. So
I thought it was a very good.
yeah. I did not create that. That came from the town of Brookfield, where I worked on that 3 years ago. So I was pretty familiar with it. So I just adapted it. I don't want to say copyrighted it. So
No need to reinvent the wheel.
that's it. CPA. I'm not a CPA, but CPAs usually say CPA stands for cut, paste, and adapt. So that's kind of what we did there. And then just ongoing discussion, something I want to keep on everyone's minds, a capital committee. I've talked to Kevin about this before and a lot of people, because I think it's very important. And it's not capital. When I think capital, it's not just that year, the next year's budget capital. It should be a 5 to 10 year projection of where, that CIP we do, but it should be more in depth. And we should tie that in with the debt service we can afford into a long-term operating budget projection as well. And I think more than a projection, I think it should be almost a guideline of what we can afford, and then try to work the budget into that the guideline. So we have some sort of benchmark every year to what we can reasonably afford. So I think that would be huge. And that capital committee would be, I don't know the exact verbiage, but it would just be a board of finance,
Board of Ed.
Yeah, board of ed, board of selectmen, engineering, public works, everybody. End of year transfers, we discussed that. We're working on those. Some big items, the firemen, the Flanders fighter budget. There was enough money to cover it within the budget, but the full-timers versus the part-timers, there was a full-timer that was out on leave, so some of the part-timers had to help out, so the lines had to be adjusted there. Same thing with dispatch, but I don't know if there was a leave or an absence. But and then legal lines, we're in the middle of charter revision, so some of those legal lines are a little running high. Revenues, they're in yellow because these are estimates and projections, right? So just to get to the bottom line here, I'm thinking between revenues coming in under and revenues coming in over and expenses coming in under. I think 500,000 is a reasonable number, unless I've missed something somewhere in my MCSJ accounting software. I don't think I have, but I think 500,000 is a good target right there. In March, when I gave the fund balance projection, I was using 540, so it's gone down a little bit, but 40,000 and $80 million budget, I'll take that. So, all right, I want to give a shout out to the tax collector's office. During the month of July, they collected 53.89%, which is over a full percent from last year. So this year they've collected $37 million during the month of July. So I wanted to give them a shout out for all their hard work. So.
Can I interrupt 1 second and go back? So with the for the fund balance projection, so here you've got revenues of $80,397,000 on the fund balance projection.
I was more worried for just the bottom line of the 500,000.
Okay.
Hold on 1 second. I'll just go forward here because it's here. I don't know where my fund balance projection went. Oh, I hit it. Hold on here. It was right there. Okay. The fund balance projection slide. That's what you're looking for. Okay, so you're right. The revenues and expenses may be off slightly because I was just trying to plug the 500,000.
Okay.
So I did not change those two particular numbers there. I just plugged the 500 there in this particular worksheet. So use the numbers from the prior sheet there. This sheet over here. It might be slightly different just because we've had some. So at the end of the year this year we had the East Lyme ambulance has to pay a subsidy for 2 firemen, the IT services, and then Waterford Animal Control. We split the cost there, so that was a couple $100,000. So the revenues and expense lines are slightly different, but 500,000 is the number we're going to go with. Shout out to the tax collectors. Talked about that. And so where does this money go? So we have $37 million. It's not sitting in a checking account any longer. So you also have an interest income projection. I'm sorry for the small font here. But and just to let everyone know, this year we budgeted $625,000 for interest income. You can see my projection here. I'm hopeful to get over $1 million. And this also, just to let everyone know, this is assuming the interest rate stays the same the whole year. It doesn't go down. So I'll keep everyone apprised. So 1.1 million roughly, which is over our $625,000 budgeted amount. So this? Yeah. So okay. All right. So, and the assumptions there are 2/3 of the money, 2/3 of the invested money, just so I could kind of walk through it. It says bank interest rate, so the STIF is giving us 5.32%. I put 5.25 there. Webster Bank is giving us 4.45% on the monies that we sweep, and then Chelsea Groton is giving us 4%. So of the invested money, 2/3 of it is sitting in Stiff, and then 1/6 of it is sitting in Webster, 1/6 in Chelsea Groton. And this isn't like a, we're moving money every day. It's just a rough idea of where the money is. And then I know the question's probably going to be, why isn't all the money in Stiff? Because they're giving us a higher interest rate. That 1/6 in those two, the Webster Bank and Chelsea Groton, that's operating, capital that's sitting there and getting drawn on as we write payroll and stuff like that. So it all can't be in Stiff. But, any questions?
No. Good.
All right, ARPA. You have another handout. It doesn't say ARPA on it, but it says along the side here, 85. The accounts start with 85. It should just be one page, front and back. Nice and clean. So if anyone has any questions here, I can direct it to the appropriate department. So really, they're just, the projects are getting drawn down. You can see a lot of them on the right side. If it says 100%, that project is either 100% expended. You can see that says net expense / reimburse. That's the expense column, and then encumbrances. So, we've spent 80% of our ARPA money.
Mm-hmm.
So and we have just shy of, we got 5,463,000. So 30,000-ish left remaining. So there's a couple $1,000s. Once these projects close out, if there's any leftover money, we do a budget transfer to zero that project out and put the money in the fund balance, ARPA fund balance. So.
All right.
Any questions?
For that transfer to the ARPA fund balance, what kind of time frame do we have to reallocate that and to spend it?
Next fiscal year. Calendar year.
Okay.
Yeah, 2024.
Okay.
But it has to be spent by what, the following year?
2026.
2026, I got 2 years, so
Yeah.
That's all I got.
it'll still come fast.
All right. Does anyone have any other questions for Kevin? Okay. Next on the agenda is a special appropriation of $50,222 from the American Rescue Funds to supplement an Eversource grant of $174,579 to install two Tier 3 electric vehicle chargers at the East Lyme Town Hall. I believe Bill Shear's here to address it.
You want to start, Kevin, or you want me to go?
Yeah, I was going to start, if that's
sure.
okay.
Absolutely.
We had, Alex, I think, talked to us a long time ago about the opportunity for the two Tier 3, and they were just not available. Some became available. We were able to get on the list for that to where we can get them, but the time frame is very short. In fact, we got it. Bill was able to get extended to the middle of September for us to have the money appropriated. So we had to try to identify a quick source, and it's as Kevin and I talked about, it's a little early in the year to hit the contingency. So we looked at some other things. One of the projects that Parks and Rec had received funding for ARPA from was the bathrooms down at Hole in the Wall, about expanding the building. That turned out not to be a very feasible opportunity, and so they didn't need all that money. So we talked to Jerry Locken. He was very comfortable about saying, no, I'm not in need for that. Some other things have been addressed to help out, so he didn't need that. We were able to clear it, go through the town attorney, make sure that reappropriating this for a project such of this nature was in compliance with ARPA expenditure guidelines, which it is. And because one of the things we had before with the pump-out vote, when that came up, that oops, did we make a mistake there because there was federal funding involved? This is not the case here. This is funding through Eversource. Is is the source. And there's been changes to the ARP guidelines since then as well, to where Tracy Collins said, no, this was not a problem at all. But as far as the specifics of the what we'd be getting and so forth like that, where it'd be, I'll let that Bill address that.
Hi, how you doing? Bill Shear, Deputy Director of Public Works. I'm sure you all know Alex is deployed over in Kuwait. Right now he's in the National Guard, so he started all this and gave it to me right before he left. What we did is he did apply for this. This is the best of the best in terms of EV chargers. It's the fastest and the most expensive. You basically can get a full charge in an hour-ish, depending on your car. The older cars take longer, the newer cars take shorter to get the same full charge. And we were put on a wait list, and we actually successfully made it through the wait list and got this grant from Eversource. Subsequently, the program has changed. We are, with the new program, we're not even eligible anymore. This is our last bite at the apple. For a grant for an EV charger for the town of East Lyme. They're eventually going to be probably phased out, seeing as they're becoming much more popular. So, of this, we're getting a grant for $175 rounded $1,000, and we have to put in $50,000 to put two EV chargers out. We're going to put them in the corner of the parking lot out here. In the northwest corner of the parking lot. Just like the other ones, we can charge whatever we'd like for them. And this also gives us the opportunity, which came up at the Board of Selectmen, that we can start looking at EV cars for the town. And the perfect place would be actually Town Hall, because our employees here, use them 8-9 hours a day, as opposed to Public Works, where they might be in a plow for 24 hours, 48 hours. That's not appropriate use for an electric vehicle for that long. So this would be a great place to start. We haven't really got into it yet, but this gives us the opportunity to at least think about it, because when you're putting $200,000 into a charger, that's a good start. Because you buy one electric vehicle for, I don't know how much they cost, and then you have to buy $200,000 for a charger. That just makes it's a different equation when you start looking at it like that. I also have Jack Cunningham from ECS, Environmental Systems Corporation, here. He has many more of the technical details or any other details if what I'm saying is not sufficient, or do you have any questions?
So in regard to, and maybe this is, so say they're here, and then, and an employee has an EV. Yeah.
Okay, here
Yeah,
again.
would they be paying?
Yes,
or?
they would. If it's a personal vehicle, if a town employee drives in here and it's free, yes, they could access it. The plan would be for them, but they would have to pay what, here again, this isn't looked to make, as a revenue source, but they would have access to it here too. But I think as time, especially on the outset, as time goes on and we start getting more and more, and it's going to happen because we've all seen, the going green, and that we're going to have, if not, probably some hybrid vehicles too. And, now that once we have these, we'll start looking at the purchase of those vehicles moving forward. Those would take priority. And that's what I think the intent would be. In the hours where they're not being used, if they're not in use, somebody would be able to access them.
I was just wondering whether the charging station would have the ability to, these people pay, these people don't pay.
I'm sure that's something I'm sure that's, and here again too, I think Bill Weber did a really good job when he said that we're not looking at the fact that we're trying to take, because, there's more and more, like Noble Gas, they have charging stations. There's going to be more and more commercial ones. And we don't want to cut into their business because we don't want to deter businesses from coming to town. But for right now, I think we're providing a good resource. And, the ones down on Main Street and the parking lots, those will be great for people to come in, plug in for a couple hours while they shop and go. Mm-hmm. These will be, I think, as time progresses, will be primary for us. At some point in time, Public Works, there'll probably be something out there too. But that we haven't even gotten there yet. Mm-hmm. And now starting to get more and more emails. Bill, you're getting them all too from other companies that aren't offering as good a product or as good of even close to the type of compensation that we are being offered here.
And actually, Mr. Cunningham is here from Environmental Systems Corp. If you'd like to.
Actually, come on.
Yeah.
The other thing is when we go to get gasoline at our town, we actually have an RFID thing that on our key chain that we have to put on the pump to use it for the town vehicles.
Okay.
Each key has it, and we enter the mileage, so they keep track of the mileage. It's a very nice system. Do they have RFID readers on these things, possibly?
Yes. So when you go to charge people, nice to meet you all, by the way. When you go to charge people, you have a bunch of options. It's a software package, and we'll spend about an hour with you guys to walk you through it. So there's a couple things you can do. You can charge employees if you want for their personal cars while giving your town cars the ability to charge. You can charge whatever you want. Typically in the state of Connecticut, we're seeing about 24 cents, but they are gouging on the highways. They're doing about 59 cents. If you have this, depending where your electric is, your all-in rate is probably somewhere between 14 and 21 cents. So if you want to make money on those cars, you would charge over that, the personal vehicles. So that's kind of how that all works. There's also a penalty that you can enact if someone comes here and tries to park their car overnight and charge, they can get alerts on their phones that, hey, your car is charged. If you don't get off of this plug, we're going to start charging you $1 a minute, or whatever you want it to be. That motivates people typically.
Yes, that's a good motivator.
High interest rate fund.
Want to bond anything anymore.
Thank you.
I think we're basically just keeping everything, all the options open at this time. So we've never done this before, so it's new to us, and we think it's a good idea.
Does anyone have any other questions?
I just had a question. You say the charger that we're going to get is a level 3.
Yes.
When I drive around to see chargers here and there, what level are they at normally? 2?
It depends. I would think it depends upon where you go.
And are the rates, I assume the rates are different for level 2, level 3?
You want to come on up? What are the ones over at Chile, the Tesla ones?
Yeah, I was going to say the level 3 is quicker, so that'd be the high test.
Yeah.
Which would be,
Yeah, so let me just ask you, when you say rate, are you talking about the rates you charge?
Yes.
Yeah, so the rates you charge it doesn't matter what the charger is. It's just the amount that, you're charging and how long. You probably see mostly tier 2s. The program is a 9-year program, and it's in 3-year buckets.
Yep.
And it's so popular that in the first year, they ran out of the whole first 3 years in money, and they shut it down in October. But then they took money from the second 3 years and started funding it. And the fast charger program was open for 3 months and it shut down. Because most of the Civic Center, all the big garages are taking all that money and putting in as many fast chargers as they can. They did open, so we also put yours in at the same time we put the Mystic Aquariums in. You got chosen, the Mystic Aquarium did not for the fast chargers. But they have tier 2s over there that we put them in.
How long does a tier 2 take?
For about 4 hours. It's dependent on the car too. You know what I mean? So it's a lot dependent on the battery. So most of the cars today that will be rolling off the assembly line will be using the fast chargers. The previous ones and the hybrids are usually better off using the tier 2s, and they sometimes come with instructions that say you can only use the fast chargers once in a while because it'll burn out the battery in certain models. So
Just out of curiosity, the only 2 I can think of is over by Chili's, the New London Mall, and then Waterford by Best Buy.
Yep.
Would you know what tier those are?
Those would be fast chargers.
All of those?
Yeah. But that was put in, those people paid cash for those.
And the new Noble at exit 75.
Yeah, those are going to be, yeah. But they're paying out and out cash. They're not going through the program, so.
Do you know what the rates are, how much they're charging on those?
I don't. I do not know that answer. But the average rate is, like I said, about 24 cents or so, because if your all-in rate's 21, you're making 4 cents, and a lot of people are doing it as a service. For the private companies, we have a lot of information from California, because that's where they've been around the longest. And for private companies, and this, there's like a 92% retention rate of employees if you give them free charging. Free gas, basically.
That's a topic for a whole other day.
Yeah.
Sure. Move to approve a special appropriation of $50,222 for the installation and operation of 2 Tier 3 electric vehicle charging stations from American Rescue Funds to an account entitled EV Charging Station, account 85-70-009, 2023-700-901. Note, this requires a town meeting.
Do I have a second? Second. Any further discussion? Any further questions? If not, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries 600.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, so we did talk about the finance annual calendar already under new business. Under unfinished business, we have the fund balance policy. I'd like to, just ask everybody to, if they've had the chance to read it all and want to discuss it today, we can. Or if you want to take it home and send in any of your changes to Kevin, and we can incorporate them for next time.
I still need,
Could
I
I-
haven't had a chance.
Okay,
Could I make a request?
sure.
Kevin, a lot of this seems real legalese to me, and I was wondering if you could bring it down to layman's English, if that's possible.
Particular sections or the whole thing?
I don't know. I just found it was a little bit confusing for me. So if you could just kind of go through it and just kind of highlight in basic terms.
Okay.
I think one of the things that we were trying to accomplish was that our existing policy really didn't define some of the things like assigned, unassigned, and the actual calculations that we were going to use, because there are a number of different ways you can calculate it. And since the current policy was silent, we wanted to say, here's, and, unfortunately, it's an area that calls for, this, yeah. Or if not legal so much as, technical accounting language. So, I think we can take a look at if there's something in particular, but I think we have to include some of the stuff that maybe.
It's like the second and third page are really the definitions of what the calculation is.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll go through it. I can.
All right. So, if everyone can send to Kevin and copy the rest of the team on any suggested changes, that would be helpful.
Okay. Just one comment. When we were starting this whole process, we initially had discussed having a range of values rather than a specific one. This kind of gives the fuzzy language of we'll work towards a target fund balance. And that target fund balance is outside of the range that we had discussed. I know where this came from your discussion of recommendations from the various financial organizations and from other towns. But I still kind of like the idea of having a range in our document.
Originally I liked that idea too, but then when you put it down in writing that it's going to fall in this range, then I'm afraid if we drop below, then it calls out a policy exception type of thing. So this seemed to sort of thread the needle of saying, here's how we came up with this number, and it's based on, the CCM recommendations, and we can work towards it, but it doesn't, make it sound like we're going to take any absolute measures if it drops below that. I think our guiding our guiding principle here, in my mind, is, right out of the S&P rating, where, for the outlook, they put the upside scenario. We could consider a positive rating action if the town continues to increase reserves and sustains them at what we consider very strong levels with no plans to draw down. So I think what they're saying there is they're happy where we are, but if we continue to add to it, we could get a ratings upgrade. And if we draw down from it, then we could get downgraded. But, so I think we're in a comfortable spot.
Yeah, so I just want to say this was my my initial attempt, and I will say this original document from the town of Brookfield is a range. So I went through it and deleted all the range language out. So if you like that, let me know. I'll just take the other copy and control replace Brookfield for East Lyme.
Okay.
And their range was 10 to 15, because this was a couple years ago before
Right.
the GFOA adopted 2 months working capital, because it was for a long time. The GFOA's best practice was the 10 to 15 range, and then when they came out with a more robust analytical template for all the municipalities to fill out, do you remember early on we had that Excel document,
Right.
Yeah.
and I think that called for about 20% fund balance when we did it. And 16 was the floor for that, so their range was much higher than what we're looking at here. So yeah, I guess that was just my comments.
Yeah.
Right, I
Well,
just,
they're in
sometimes I hear out in the public, that why are we, I understand and I fully acknowledge and agree with that we need to keep the undesignated fund balance as robust as possible, because ultimately it affects our borrowing rates. But there is the perception in the public, why are you having all this money that could be utilized for other things? And that's why I like a range, and that's why if people can see a range, we're also held accountable on the low end too, that if we somehow do manage to go to the low end of the range, I think we need to really look at things closely and work hard to change that direction. And it holds us accountable.
And the reason I really liked this document, so 2 things I'll say. One, the 16.67, that number for the 2 months of working capital. So part of my earlier discussion was trying to move the timing of some of the bond payments and the debt service. That's exactly why, the cash flow issue. We have bonds that are due July 15th, but most of the mortgage companies in the world, they don't pay us until July 31st. So, maybe we'll collect, of that 37 million, maybe we collected, 14, 15 million, but we have to, we paid out, $4 million of debt service, and on top of everything else. So it just comes down to kind of that fund balance does become working capital at some point.
Right.
And if the fund balance dropped low enough, there could be a time we had to take out, like a short-term loan for just to cover basic cash.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
and
I didn't read this closely enough,
okay.
but is it spelled out that 2-month working capital to meet the fund balance request?
It doesn't really say that in there, no. So we can work towards that. And then the other comment I just want to make, so this fund balance policy also has a portion here discussing contingency, right? And how they're looking to at least 0.5% of the operating. So this is a little more of a robust of just a basic, here's our fund balance policy. This, it's 5.5 pages, 7 pages.
Ties
So-
to the budgeting.
Yeah, so there's other aspects to this that we tried to incorporate a couple years ago, and we incorporated in the budget this year as well, because we had a little over 0.5% contingency.
Right.
So
Right.
Right,
That's just
well,
my comments.
let's give everybody a chance to really read through it and make their recommendations, and then we can,
Thank you for the explanations.
yep. All set to, everybody good? So next is public discussion. We have one member of the public Anything? All set? All right. Thank you. Board comments? Anybody?
I'm glad we're making progress on the fund balance. I know that's been a
Yeah.
sticking point, and I'm glad you explained why it's a higher rate than what we've discussed in the past. I was a little taken aback with that, but
Yep. Well, and that's just the rate, we've been discussing, so I put in there, this is
Yeah.
totally a draft.
Right.
But I was like, okay, well, I'll just put that in there and we'll
Yeah.
see the appetite. So,
Well, plus we went to two different ways of thinking about it in terms of, the changes to CCM, so.
and the other point I'll make is, on that rating call, S&P knew we had 15% fund balance, or right around 15%, and they still didn't give us that positive rating because it's not enough for them. So there was three things they really wanted: an increase to the fund balance, establishing an OPEB trust, and something with a coastal resiliency plan. So those are three things we're going to be working. I would like to see, that as a town working towards those before I have to get on that call again next year.
And I think one of the things, to your point, Richard, people don't understand, why are you sitting here with this fund? I mean, if you can say, this is the difference in how much we're going to pay on all of our debt outstanding. And we have a lot of debt.
Right.
So that it means we get to hopefully save the taxpayers' money by having it.
Right. And it might be advantageous to memorialize that so that the public can understand that this money isn't just sitting there, but it is actually saving us money in the long run.
And it creates interest for us.
Yep.
So,
All right, thank you. So next on the agenda is executive session to discuss real estate, East Lyme Land Trust, Oswegatchie Hills, Hathaway Farms property. Do I have a motion to move into executive session?
so moved.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, the Board of Finance has just voted to come back out of executive session with no action taken. And next on the agenda is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.